At the same time, let's keep going. Verse 6, let's read together. It says, and he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Now, this is comforting too. You know why? Because Abraham has sold his wife already. He disobeyed God already. He's done some bad stuff. And so if it was up to him and how he was living, he wouldn't receive the promise. But all Abraham had to do was what? Believe. Paul brings this back up in Romans chapter 4, verse 10 through 24. We won't read it tonight, but write that down. Go back and read Romans chapter 4, verses 10 through 4, because we are saved by grace through faith. We're not saved by what we do. We're saved simply because we what? Believe. Abraham had righteousness credited to him because of his faith in what? God. It's on your paper down there, question number 5. It's at the end. But go back and read Romans chapter 4, 10 through 24. God credited him for righteousness. You want to be righteous? Have faith in God. Isn't that amazing? That no matter how hard you try, you can't live good enough to get to heaven. And I know can't is probably not the best way for those who like a proper pronunciation. You can't. You can't get to heaven based off of what you do. But if you will simply believe, God will credit righteousness to your account. How many of you loved it when the government was simply crediting stuff to your account? You didn't do anything for it. You got to pay for high gas now. That's how inflation works. But at the end of the day, it was exciting to see somebody credit something that you really didn't do anything for. That's salvation. You simply believe God, and he credits it to you. You can't do anything to earn it. Wow, that's amazing. You see how themes start in Genesis and they go all the way throughout the Bible? That's why it's important to learn Genesis, because this is the foundation, and whatever you learn here is going to be a theme that's carried throughout the what? Bible. So you really need to know Genesis pretty well. Now I'm going to ask, can somebody tell me from our teachings all the way through so far, what is a covenant? Somebody give me a word for what a covenant is. A what? It's an agreement. That's it. A covenant is an agreement. That's the answer to the first question. What's another word we might use today? That we use today. We do it all the time. We say you sign a what? A contract. It's a legal binding agreement that what you do, you say you're going to do. And you hold to your word. And God is about to renew his covenant with Abram. And so Abram believes and God credits him for righteousness. Now we're going to go down to verse 7 and we're going to read. We're just going to read all the way to about the end. Because once we get cranking on this, we're going to keep on down. So let's go to verse 7 all the way through the end. Let's read it together. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee to this land to inherit. Now stop, pay close attention to that. We're coming back to that. When we get into the order of how covenants work, you'll notice that he's starting the covenant right there. That's how covenants work. We're going to come back and talk about that. Let's go. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee to this land to inherit. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these and divided them in the midst and laid each piece one against another, but the birds he divided not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But here's the good news. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation thou shalt come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between the pieces. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites. So we're going to see what God is doing right here. God is making a covenant. In Genesis 15 and 12, it says Abram fell into a what? A deep sleep. God is getting ready to do something to him. For those of you who want to go back and study the Hebrew of that word is tardema. Why do I even bring that word up? It's because it's a Hebrew word that's used in the Old Testament. But when you first see it, it's Genesis 2 and 21, when it says, and he caused Adam to fall into a what? Deep sleep. So what I want you to see is when you see the word tardema, God is generally about to do something. God is about to do some work. And so just like he caused Adam to tardema, or to fall into a deep sleep, he's about to give Abraham this covenant and renew him. So he causes Abraham to fall into a deep sleep. Something divine is about to happen. And if you flip over on the back of your page, you'll see the parts of a covenant. Now, in an Old Testament covenant, during those times, there are different parts, 6 parts to a covenant. The number one is called a preamble. Everybody say preamble. A preamble, when you're having a covenant between two people or a party agreement, the preamble is generally saying that it's declaring who the parties of the covenant are. For instance, God just said, he's announcing, remember I told you to pay attention to it, I am the what? Lord. Now, generally, there are 2 parties in here, but I'm going to go ahead and skip to one of the good parts because I want to get to it. Generally, it would say, I am Willie and you are Mark, and we're going to have a covenant between each other. And as we break this, as we do this covenant, we are agreeing for something to happen. But he calls Abram to be what? Tardema, into a deep sleep. In other words, God is saying, I'm making this covenant and I don't need you. In other words, you're not going to even be involved. I just need you to hear what I have to say, because I'm not worried about your ability to bring this covenant to pass. I'm going to bring this covenant to pass. The next part of the covenant that we have after the preamble is called a prologue. Everybody say prologue. This is generally a backstory. We'll see this if you look through Exodus. I am the Lord thy God that brought thee out of Egypt. It tells you how we got to this place. In other words, I am Willie. You are Mark. We want to sell a car between each other. And so therefore we're here today. In other words,